My name is Namo Simuka. I'm an MCIPS who was accredited 2015. And from there, I've been in CIPS tutoring field until today. There's no day I have thought to say, no, let me, let me take a rest. But I feel like we need to make numbers in all those MCIPS statistics. If we take the MCIPS statistics in Africa, it's just a number which we still want more at the top. And there is also a clip which is made by my friend Simba, which says, let's meet at the top. So let's all start and meet at the top. So I'm the head tutor for Distinct Learning Institution with the contact details shared on my screen. And also Tsehofaso, Ms. Tsehofaso, being the administration manager of the studies there. So now when we're talking about this issue of CIPS, it's a global premium in terms of procurement and supply chain matters. And hence we are bound to bring the premium to reality. So as Distinct, we are meant also to come in the revision and also steer the ship in terms of creating the environment for CIPS to be a premium with the distinctions. So what is L4M7 as a module? L4M7 as a module, it's a module which talks about whole life asset management. So whole life asset management. So if we talk about procurement in this regard, procurement is the processes where things happens from cradle to grave. So what is the cradle? The cradle is the start of initiating the procurement process and so on. So we might talk of L4M1, L4M2, L4M3, L4M4, 5, 6, but when we are at 7, and the part of 8, now we are talking to say we have acquired the asset. So how do we manage that asset? That's the concept there. So this module is an objective response module, meaning to say it's a computer-based module and it's a multiple choice module. We just got 6 credits. We just got 6 credits. And in the exam, be prepared to meet 60 questions. Just got 1 mark each, and those 60 questions must be answered in a period of 2 hours. Do not assume that the exam is as easy as we think, but do not be scared of the exam. I would remember my days when I was also doing the same studies at this level. I could challenge myself to say, can I have 5 at each level? So I'm one of those students who wrote 5 at each level until at level 5, where I told myself, I tried 5, I wrote them 5, but I think the pressure will be too much on myself. So what I'm trying to say is, let's not be scared. It can be done. If it is done by me, why not being done by you? The other issue is, let's be very familiar with the definitions. If we are trying to say throughput, what do we mean by throughput? Let's be very familiar with the scenarios. Scenarios is more of like, maybe sometimes you might be given a quiz. A quiz, like when I was studying some time back gone, I always wish to give you this one as an example, where they say scenarios where they'd say there are 2 thieves. These 2 thieves, assuming that it's Mr. S and Tseho, they want to go, they plan to say, oh, okay, fine. We don't have money, but let's go and join the colleagues in cash in transit. But if we are caught, the issue is both of us were going to get 20 years. But let's agree before we go. If we are caught, say where you go to you agree, you accept to say, it's me who have stolen who have done the crime, Mr. S wasn't there. Tseho get 20 years, then I'll take care of the family myself. Tseho and my family. But also argue, say, no, Mr. S, but you are a man. You agree yourself. When you agree, you get 20 years, and me as a leader, I'll be out there and I'll check off for your family, because you might be so good and resilient in the terms of correctional service issues. Then little do we know that when we go to court, Tseho might be asked on her own, and I might be also asked on my own, and find out who were we both involved or either of us was involved. So if we are both convicted, she's going to get 20, she's going to get 10, sorry, I'm going to get 10. But if one of us convicted and one set free, is going to get 20. So equally means that that creates a scenario, but it's more of a quiz, which we normally used in the negotiation arena. So let's be very careful to use models like Logic matrix, features, and context, or like trying to understand what will be the table mean or any presentation, the diagrams of any nature, case studies, command words, and linking words. Sometimes you might find out that some of the words or some of the scenarios, they might be linking from L4M1 and carried forward to L4M2 and carried even to L4M7. So the example I might give there is 80-20 rule. The way we might be using 80-20 rule in L4M7, we are talking about the inventory storage and the inventory value in according to that. But the way we might be using 80-20 rule in L4M1, we'll be talking about even supplier classification. So you would see that the concept is the same, but how do you apply it? How do you want to use it? How are you going to interpret it? So we are saying be familiar with such scenarios. What is this tool used for and where to use it? And what is the interpretation at that ultimate goal? Then I'll talk about, let me see my presentation. It's okay, fine, I'm winning now. So I've talked about this. Let me talk now about when you are advising or studying. So our book, if there's someone who has got a book wherever he is or wherever she is, I'll just give you an illustration to open the book. I want to show you something. So the book is what we call learning outcome. What is a learning outcome? Like what has been presented on page 3 to page 4. What is a learning outcome? A learning outcome, the way I described it from myself, is a clear scope with which the learner is expected to understand and typically know the value and the contextual meaning at the completion of such a study. So the learning outcome I'll give you as an example from L4M7 is a learning outcome which says, understand methods for storage and movement of inventory, which is learning outcome number 1. But the learning outcome doesn't move on its own in isolation or standalone. It moves with what we call assessment criteria, which becomes assessment criteria number 1. And assessment criteria number 1 says, identify the principles, purpose, and impact of stores and warehouse design. And what would be the indicative content? Indicative content, we are not talking about the sub chapters of the assessment criteria. The first one might talk about principles of stores and warehouse. The second one might talk about purposes of stores and warehouse as we go by until we reach to the far end. Why is this important? In accordance to page Roman numeral 3 to Roman numeral 4, it is because it assists you to understand the module sequentially in accordance to the chapters, and therefore you avoid reading the module or studying like you are reading a novel. The more you understand it better this way, the more you are going to accumulate more understanding, and your reading and the participation in any case, even answering the questions, will be lighter for you because you'll be reading the module in accordance to the learning outcome, cascading down or drilling down to the assessment criteria and indicative content has been illustrated by the module itself. So if you just read for the purpose of reading, you'd see that some of the content might confuse you at the end, and you are not understanding where are you coming from and where are you going, and what are the lessons you've drawn from even the past 2 chapters, assuming that you might be on page 3, because you'll be reading it as a novel. So reading it as a professional study book, which you need to understand, drive the practical element in workplaces. If you read it through cascading from learning outcome, going to assessment criteria, going down to indicative content, it will be easier for you. My next slide is talking about things to take note of, or areas to take note of whilst you are still studying. If you go on page Roman numeral 9, if I'm not mistaken, there are some features I want you to see there. It is written book features. Book features. So when you are studying, even if revising, remember where you find a drawing pin. Remember where you find a drawing pin. It means this information is important, so you need to make use of it. Then at the same page again, there is a semicircled colony, which is written as check. What is that? A mark which is semicircled. Well, how it is written, it says the revision questions that you might be given the chance to understand the chapter content. Then there's what we call, where there's a writing hand and it's written apply. What does that apply? It equally means that the tasks you might give, they might give you the chance to apply the principle, to apply the element, to apply the context in any given understanding of your exam. Then there's a writing pad with a pen, and it's written recap. What is that? The information assumes you need to summary the summary sections, the chapter sections, and the summary will be driven for you to just go through the summary. Then there is some case studies wherever we go by. I would still remember that was 2012 when I read one of the case studies where it talked about a shipman as a captain of the ship who was commanding a ship from Europe, but he died on the way, and his assistant had to carry on until he finished the journey to Africa. That was a case study. So they were asking to say, then the assistant, in any case after arrival, he was asking to say, can I be given 2 salaries? Because remember, I took over from my captain who passed on the way, and I also took over from my own responsibility at the same time. So I was doubling the duty. So can I be paid 2 salaries? That was the case. So was it saying, was there an offer for this captain to claim to be paid twice, or there wasn't an offer? Can we justify and argument on that fact? That becomes an issue to do with case studies. So those case studies, they give you a very much understanding in terms of the scenarios, in terms of the contextual meaning of whatever the chapter is, and how are they signified in the book. There's a global map, which is signifying, and which has got some magnifying glasses or binoculars. Then there's also an open book, which is called for recommended reading. Recommended reading is normally we are saying there might be a very, very important element there, and you are recommended to read it. Then There is a link which says link to CIPS knowledge, where members will be able to access additional resources. If I could remind you, colleagues, wherever you are, if you are able to go on the link, try to connect with the link. You might be using your phone. The moment you click it, it will refer you to L4M7. And in the arena of L4M7, you'll find a lot of extra reading material using even that link. You'll find a lot of even practical element issues which you can apply at your work using the same link. Then after each and every chapter, there is end chapter assessment, which you need to identify, and it's normally a written identify. So all of the above are visibly shown on the page I've mentioned before, but don't forget the importance of glossary and index as reference to page 210 and 220 of the module. They might be very, very helpful, and they're actually very helpful. Let me not use the word might. They are very, very helpful. If you go there, definitions are even drawn there. If you go there, maybe you are struggling to understand what is the meaning of carbon footprint. You can even go there and find out from the index, and the page will be indicated to you, and you go by and go and read the context as per reference. My next slide is talking what to bring. So I'll do one by one though it's not arranged in according to what I wanted it to do. Technology, Internet of Things. Anyway, can you see my doll? There is that, I can say gentleman or that lady just sleeping with a doll. What I'm trying to signify there, I'm trying to say, let's say you have 24 hours before the exam. I understand we need to read before the exam, but I would advise you have enough sleep. Have enough sleep, have enough rest. Try to avoid anything which might stress you. Try to avoid anything which might take away your mood off the track. And let's say maybe you got so busy during the day, and going to the exam, be there on time. If you feel like you need just have a nap, like the way I do myself, when I feel like, oh, I'm a bit exhausted a bit, but I have got a meeting maybe which needs much of my concentration, around 30 minutes to go or 1 hour to go, I give myself like 15 minutes. Then I set my alarm. I can even go in the car, then I take my nap. The moment I wake up, I'll be very, very fresh. The mind will be very fresh. But for those who not believe into that, please don't take it as an advice, but have enough sleep before the exam. My second thing is be at the exam center. Be at the exam center earlier, say not less than 30 minutes from the time of sitting for the exam. Not less than 30 minutes earlier than the time when you want to start the exam. Because the moment you are panicking, congestion might be there all over. You might be also frustrated on the way. I would imagine when I'm driving also, you want to go to work and you have got a meeting and you are late. You reach there while frustrated already, and the meeting will go by whilst you are thinking about what has happened. But what I'm saying is be earlier than expected time. Give yourself enough time to be at this exam center. I have brought two things. Let me drop the other one. Right, I've finished what I want to do. So let me start with a calculator. A calculator should be part of your particulars whenever you're going for the exam. Whether you are going to have other methods of calculating, but you really know what is going to happen on yourself. You might not be familiar with any gadget which has been brought to you there, but your own thing, your own gadget which you are used to might be very helpful for you to use, like a calculator. Why do we need to use a calculator? There's a lot of formulas. Formulas like Eoq, which talks about how to calculate Eoq, square root of 2ds over h. What does it mean? Do you need to calculate using a pen? Do you need to calculate using a calculator? Obviously, you need a calculator for you to move on. You also find out there's a lot of issues to do with stock turn, maximum stock levels, issues to do with fixed order quantity, all things like periodic review, stock levels, stock leveraging, all those things you need to have a calculator with you. Sometimes they can even talk about issues to do with suppliers, financial issues, where you need to talk about asset ratio, quick ratio, profit, net and loss account, all those things, you need to calculate them. Then also, I know it's a computer-based exam, but there are some certain issues maybe you are calculating, but you want to prove whether the answer is correct or wrong. When you are going to the reverse, you need to at least maintain the figures on a certain page. If you're allowed to do so, then you move forward. What is a banana? Are we going to a restaurant? Are we going for food fiesta? The issue is no. But the use of a banana, if you go and Google the uses of a banana, you are told that the moment you are so anxious, if you eat a banana, not too much, maybe one, or a maximum maybe two, then you give yourself on a corner and give yourself a rest. The anxiety will also always disappear. And sometimes a banana is also said is good to maintain you not to visit the bathroom every moment and then, so that you don't distract your concentration in an exam. But don't forget also that your statement of entry and your identification is wanted. But this is just a fingertips. I'm just mentioning them. The reason why I did not bring them here, I know that is a first requirement with which CIPS always require you to be. After the exam, post-mortem. Post-mortem is not always good. Post-mortem is not always good. Just avoid discussing the exam. Just avoid discussing the exam with the others, whosoever you wish to discuss with. Please just avoid discussing the exam. And also, don't stress yourself, and also do your best and forget the rest. So this is my presentation, where we are found with my sister, who is behind everything, not forgetting Sari and Malika, who made this event successful, is on what I have displayed there on the presentation. Where we come from, we don't call it a stud room, but it's a theater of transformation. We will be a family. There is no like, Mr. S is our tutor, as Mr. S is our colleague. For those who are there at distinct, they can even confess from this platform to say, this is how we do it. I'll be only your guiding frontman or stickman during the starting of the module. Upon a revision and any other discussions, I won't participate. We even rotate to say who is leading us this time around, and we revise. And we do our best. Last time, I think with L4M7, I can confess this, we had even more than 89%. The least was 78%. That's distinct for you. Thank you, colleagues. This is my presentation in terms of the exam tips. Can I ask for any questions in discussion before we move into the critical matters of our discussion of the day? Or amongst the panelists, Seho, Sari, and Malika, I can see there's Andre again. If you need to have a comment on my presentation or any other matters, you are also welcome. Thank you.
Good afternoon again, colleagues. May I ask that you post the questions, and or if you have a question, you can also unmute, but it would help if we get a sense. So the whole objective and the thinking behind how we decided to run this session was to give you an opportunity also just to get a broader picture and prepare, but also then for you to bring the questions that then the lecturer will respond to. So we are waiting on the questions, taking that you've prepared, and maybe there's areas where you have been stuck, and you might need a bit of clarity. So we are here for you. Malika, please help me if I'm missing the hands or the questions. Oh, I'm a little bit.
I'm seeing there's a question from Emily Ramonyai. It says, is the exam 2 hours or is 1 hour and 30 minutes? Can I respond, or I'll wait for all of? Oh, okay, fine. Okay, what happens is the structure of the exam, for you to be in the exam room, actually the allocated time specifically for the exam is 1 hour, 30 minutes. But if you understand the issue of computer-based, normally the exam is said to be 2 hours. There's 30 minutes for you to familiarize with the gadgets you are going to use, the type of questioning, the type of answering, There's also even some symbols of how you need to go about the exam. So if you understand this computer-based exam, mostly the structure is for you to understand how to use the gadget, how to maneuver to the next question, how do you go back to the previous question, should you wish to change the answer. So technically the exam is 1 hour, 30 minutes. The real exam is 1 hour, 30 minutes, but it's 30 minutes for you to familiarize with what tools do you need to use in the exam. Thank you. There is another one which says, Chapter 1 is filled with a lot of information on equipment like crane, forklift, what kind of questions to come on this. I'll come to that question. Can you just keep it? But I'll come to that question as I'm going to enroll Chapter 1. But for now, let's just discuss about the exam tips, like what has been asked by the previous candidate. On Q&A, there's a question which says, I need your help on L designs, more clarification, please. I'll come back to you on the question as I go by some chapters, but for now, let's discuss about the exam tips. If there is any questions, allow me to move forward.
I think we may move forward, Mr. Simeka.
Okay, fine. So let me briefly talk about Chapter 1. I don't want to take much of the time. I know there's time allocated for me to talk about Chapter 1, but I don't want to talk much about that because I need to answer most of the questions. But my technique in answering the questions is usually we discuss together. So, but however, I'll be guided by you, but also the panelists, wherever you are, you can raise your hand. I can give the panelists the time for you to speak. I need to have an interaction so that we have a more of like entertaining debate, though we don't want to bring a lot of back and forth on the matter, so that we try to bring to attend to anyone's issues with this short space of time. So Chapter 1, like I said, it talks about the issues to do with understanding the methodologies in the storage and movement of inventory. So that is our learning outcome number 1. So the issues to do with that we'll talk about how are the principles and the purpose of stores and warehouse, where we need to understand the issues, the two issues you need to understand here, which is normally a question which is mostly confused students, not troubling such, but it confused most of the students. And as also at my level, it used to be a question. What happens here is the question normally asks you about issues to do with warehouse location and the warehouse design. The two are totally different, but they move together. The warehouse location, we are trying to say, where do you need to locate your warehouse? Let's assuming you are in the Republic of South Africa, in Gauteng. Do you want it to be in East Rand? Do you want it to be in West Rand? Do you want it to be in Joburg? Do you want it to be in Pretoria? So if you want it to be in Pretoria, what are your considerations? That's a warehouse location. A warehouse design, now we are saying you want now to build the warehouse. What is the proper design should it fit? Is it a warehouse for a hardware stores? Is it a warehouse for a production lines? Is it a warehouse for clothing factory? That now defines the design, the type of ventilation system, the windows, the doors, the areas where there's going to be some deliveries, the areas where there's going some issues in terms of issuing out any of the requirements outside the to the outside clients. That becomes now the issues to do with the design. So don't be confused, the warehouse location and the warehouse design. Those are the issues which normally have a lot of differences. There's a lot of challenges to students. And also the issue to do with the space and layout, space and layout. When we are saying space, we're talking about the periphery and the perimeter of the warehouse itself. That would be the space. Then the flow now, we are talking about the arrangement of the racks in accordance to how a picker will move along the warehouse for him to pick whatever he wants. That would be the issues normally which you need to know, especially to be very careful of when we're talking of 1.1. 1.2, we talk about the issues to do with coding and inventory operations. There, the issue of coding in RFID, radio frequency identification, that becomes a most of challenges and discussions, quite a lot of there. You understand that like the coding system as it is there, but it can involve a lot of things. It can involve numbers, it can involve alphabet, it can be alphanumerical, it can have like other identifier features. But what is the main difference in according to RFID? That is the main issue in according to that. Then the use of tracking technologies, that is the telematics in terms of movement. We nowadays to say, my car has got a tracker, but where is this tracker designed? What is the chip inside there? That is only the use of RFID. You might see that there is no another code, but it's the issue of telematics driven by RFID. Then 1.3 talks about the contrasting impact of the difference of warehouse equipment, which is the question which has been recently asked. For those who grew up like the way I were reading in 2012, I used to call it MHE because it's MHE, mechanical handling equipment. The moment I call myself MHE, I'll start to think of a crane, I'll start to think of conveyor belt, I start to think of cantilever, I'll start to think of roller trucks, all those issues. I'll talk even in ordinary wheelbarrow at my own home place, I'll put it in there because it's part of mechanical handling equipment. But in according to that, we need also to consider the environmental, the palletizing system, the packaging system, and the movement of stores from old way of operations into automation. This is learning outcome number 1. Then out of the learning outcome number 1 now, let me now just try to answer the questions which has been asked. The person says, is Faith Jakuchichi says, I need a help on aisles designs. More clarification, please. So what is an aisle? An aisle, should I click where I say answer live or type an answer? But I wish to answer live because the moment I want to type, I might take a lot of time typing. Moderators?
Oh, you have to be live.
Okay, to be live. Okay, fine. So when we are talking about aisles designs, what are aisles? Some can call them aisles. So aisles are spaces in between inventory racks. So if, let's assume you are in a shop, it can be a grocery shop, it can be a hardware. There are some spaces in between a rack and they are meant for movement. So now, if we are arranging the inventory flow or the warehouse flow, the warehouse flow, we need to consider those aisles. How wide should they be? What needs to be moved in between the aisles? If you see like the aisles in a hardware warehouse, where sometimes there is need for movement with a tab, and the aisles in a food warehouse, where there's need for me to push a trolley of food, the spaces are totally different. But what determines the aisles is now the racking system with which the organization wants to design how the racking system moves. So like what I've said, if you are moving in a warehouse, you would find out like the aisles might be very wider, but if you are moving in a store warehouse or a food warehouse, they might be narrow. So the designs in according to those aisles and the racking system will also affect the aisling system with which the institution want to follow. And the designs of those aisles also determines the distance to be moved by the picker from the picking point until to the point where the issuing of the inventory is done. So in any case, there is no need for in a warehouse or in a hardware to make maybe 100-meter aisle where there is no any other side aisle which you can make a shortcut to pick something. So the design now will determine to say how should be the distance of every picker moving to pick an item until he or she delivered that item to the issuing bay. You see, so the design there will be determined with the distance with which it has been to be designed so that the aisles do not have or do not detect longer distance for someone to pick them. And also they need to understand how wide or how should they be narrow in between for people to make a movement. You would find out in any given warehouse, you can even have someone coming from the east, someone coming from the eastern side, someone coming from the western side. You can even pass each other. That determines the design of those aisles. The distance with which one needs to move in picking an item, that determines the design of the aisles. Also, the issue of demand of an item, where we are saying, where do we need to put a fast moving item? Where do we want to move to put a medium moving item? Where do we want to put a the least demanding item? You'd find out that those aisles again, with the racking system, we need also to find out if we are having a high demand product, where do we need to place it? If we are moving with a medium demand item, where do we need to put it? So those aisles and those spaces are determined by those considerations whenever they are being done. Secondly, can you explain more about the bullwhip? Secondly says, can you explain more about the bullwhip? The bullwhip effect, sometimes in the book, you might find out it's written as Forrester effect, or it can be related to what we call the Forrester effect. So what is the bullwhip? For those who grew like me, we would go and hit kettles day in, day out on the weekends after school. We used to make our own African whips. So the more the whip is longer, the more it makes noise. The more it's shorter, the more it does not make a lot of noise. So what is the bullwhip effect? So the bullwhip effect is a concept which was used by economists and those who understand the issue of inventory management in terms of deficiencies and variances between demand and supply within the supply chain. Let me repeat again. The Bullwhip effect is a system or a theory which is used to define or to explain the differences or variances of demand and supply within the supply chain. So if we look on supply chain, we've got what we call the upstream. The upstream going to the downstream. What is the upstream? This is the side where a resource is coming from. Let's assume you are a farmer. A farmer who's growing, we have got a farmer. A farmer is growing wheat. But what is the end product which is designed by wheat? It's bread. Now, let's go through the supply chain. There's a farmer, he's growing wheat. He's going to the grinder, there's grinding mill there. The wheat is transformed into flour. Flour needs also to be delivered to our barn, or to any bread manufacturing company. Then there's bread. The bread is delivered to ShopRite. It's delivered to OK for those in Zimbabwe. It's delivered to any other shops or any food factory, wherever you are, just assume that. Then the consumer is me, Mr. S, who's going to buy that bread. So within the process flow from the inbound going to the outbound there until to the customer there, and from the upstream going to the downstream, there might be some distortions, variances, discrepancies in forecasting system. Because ShopRite might come and say, per day, we are selling 5,000 loaves. But the person at the middle there, he might distort the figures and say, okay, fine, in my distribution car, in my distribution vehicle, I can carry 6,000 loaves. Then the person who's supplying flour would calculate to say, for 6,000 loaves, how much flour do I want? It goes back to the farmer and says, for me to have 5 tons of flour, how much tons of wheat do I have? So the distortion now has already created a deficiency or a variance or a surplus of 1,000 loaves already on the market. So as it moves by, the distortion might vary and might keep on creeping or might keep on adding up until maybe the variance can be 2,000, or maybe the shortage in the reverse cycle might be minus 2,000 loaves within the market. So the Bullwhip effect now is describing now to say the effect of the distortions in between the upstream to the downstream, or from the inbound going to the consumerization. If I'm using Porter's value chain, is what is being described as the Bullwhip effect. And the Forrester effect now is now a cementing discussion or explanation in according to the Bullwhip effect. Now, if you look on the Forrester effect, it will come in now to us to say, so how do we work around for us to avoid the Bullwhip effect or to avoid the distortions? So you would find out like reverse logistics of where administration, the supply chain is always what? One of the solutions. Let's start from the consumer, going back to the inbound. But is that effective? The answer is always not really effective, but at least there's a remedy to the distortions on the demand and supply within the supply chain. That's the Bullwhip effect. The other question is, please, can you explain consignment stocking? Thank you. Consignment stocking is one of the methods in terms of inventory control systems. So I would love to talk about inventory control systems. These are what makes the consignment, this what makes our inventory and warehouse management system so efficient. So consignment stocking, sometimes people say it's traditional, but I always argue because it still exists. But what is it? Consignment stocking is an arrangement which is made by buyer and supplier. They agree to say, you as a buyer, you are the person who is the focal point of selling the product. I will give you my stock. Then you sell my stock. Then we do reconciliation weekly, monthly, periodically, at any given moment. Now, you are going to pay me what has been bought from your sales from your real folk sales within the stores. Let me give an example for you to make it clear. You know, this issue of consignment stocking, this is the issue what brought what we call merchandisers. I would imagine I'm working for Nugget. Nugget will say, I am coming to your store. Let's agree. I'll give you 5,000. Those tins of nuggets. Then you pay me as they are bought. So for me to have that consignment stocking be well managed, I will put my merchandiser. The merchandiser puts, like, for example, she puts 100 or he puts 100. He might maintain them according to how they are bought. Then also if they are finished, I put another ones until maybe weekly or monthly. We do reconciliation with the retailer and find out how many products have been bought within the stock I have brought to you. That is consignment stocking. So consignment stocking is an inventory control system with which the supplier delivers a certain quantity of goods to the supplier or to the retailer, to the buyer, sorry, or to the retailer, and monitor the demand of such commodities as they are bought on the market and make a reconciliation periodically. So for you to understand it, I would come back and say, what is the opposite of consignment stocking? That becomes VMI, vendor managed inventory. So what is vendor managed inventory now? That will be opposite of VMI. Vendor managed inventory now is now an arrangement whereby the supplier will agree to say, I have this commodity, the buyer supplier will agree to say, I have this type of commodities with me here. Then I'll go like as a buyer to say, let's, for example, you are a group of 5 on this one. Group of 5, you want to build, you are in the road refurbishments. So N1 from South Africa, you want to join Zimbabwe, then you want to join Mozambique as you go by. And also for the other wing, they'll be trying to join Botswana, Namibia as we go by in Southern Africa. So they say, okay, WBH1, a group of 5 from PPC, we need a road worth cement about 5,000 tons per every 100 kilometer pack. So what do? We need to agree to say, this is a very huge project, and hence I do not need the stock at group of 5's warehouse. You keep it for me. Then I would demand, or I will request a supply whenever I want such a supply at such a given time. So what will happen is, when you are starting from Joburg, going with N1, you are going to Zimbabwe, maybe 100 kilometers away from Joburg, going along N1, then you say, oh, my supplier, PPC, supply me with certain type of, with a certain number of tons of cement, like 100,000 tons, give me that cement. PPC will supply you, and sometimes they will even supply you with those concrete mixing, and you agree to say what is per usage per every 100 kilometer. You do the same. You monitor the trend, but what you need to monitor is you need to have what we call open book costing or transparency costing, whereby on the movement, everything is done clearly, and the usage of such product is also seen or is witnessed by everyone, such that at the end of the day, when you are reconciling in terms of the usage per period, it will be clear to everyone. That becomes VMI. So conclusively, what is VMI? It's an arrangement whereby the supplier stocks the commodities from his place or from his supply side, only supplies the buyer when a request has been triggered at such a given time in accordance to the quantity. And sometimes each and every order can create a distinct contract on its own. When I'm saying distinct contracts, I'm meaning to say can create a distinct PO on its own, purchase order on its own, and it can be paid in accordance to each and every order, but depending with the arrangement you are made. So consignment stocking and vendor managed inventory are the opposite, but they are both vendor management, they are both inventory management or inventory control systems. Thank you. Moderators, you can check the time for me, whether I'm still on time with the question, the chapter number 1. Then you are saying which type of aisles are most effective in a warehouse? On this question, I would love to discuss which one do you know are the most effective or the ineffective ones. But if we discuss about aisles, we need also to check about the floors. Floors, I'm not talking about the floor, the ground, but I'm talking about the inventory floor. That's FLOW. FLOW. So some layouts in accordance to efficiency and accessibility of the stores might also define the efficiency of the aisles. So if you check from the book, especially from page 17, where there are issues to do with aisles, accessibility and layout flows of a warehouse and the stores, the issue of stock flow, the issue of goods in and goods out, the improving of one-way efficient flow and racking access. They can be as many as possible. But what I can say is an aisle or a flow of an aisle or access flow of inventory will determine your throughput at the end of the day. But what I can say on this question is it all depends with what you want in according to what type of items do you deal with. Because I can come up to say the U-shape can be the best in terms of efficient flow. But someone will argue to say, no, it cannot be. But in according to the book, they can talk of different, there's the U-shaped flow, there's the Fanny flow, there's the herringbone flow, the narrow and the wider aisles, the space flexibility. But in according to your question, there's some like conventional aisle flows and layout. But if you want me to answer you according to the book, a food for thought, I would rather say maybe the U-shape can be efficient, but someone will come in to say, it cannot be that way because I think the conventional flow will flow in this way. But should you wish us to discuss on this one, let's refer ourselves to the text and to the book and discuss more. Because why do I need to do so? Because I need also to justify in according to whatever has been written in the book to say, then if we're talking about U-shape, what do we mean? What is the space utilization? What is the flow? Narrow flow, or what would be the aisles? Should we have narrow aisles or wider aisles? If we are talking about the Harrington, what will be the issues? If we are talking about the fan-shaped layout, what will be the issues? So it really needs a clear line of discussion. If the moderators allow me to invite everybody for any discussion, that would be very great on this question.
Yes, Mr. Simuka, that's fine. I think the students are free to engage on the matter.
Okay.
There's a hand of my.
You can assist me to see the hands. You can also come in as the initiator of the question. Can you please unmute your mic and speak?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Hello. Hi, Mai. And then.
I write a question at the chat and Q&A about the difference between the packaging and packing.
I think I'm concentrating on Q&A. I'm not checking on the chats now, but should I also encourage colleagues to post on their Q&A so that I'm not attending to two sides of the questions? Yeah. Okay, Juve, you can come in. Vasni, you can come in.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can't hear you, my brother.
1 second, maybe my mic is muted. Can you hear me now?
We cannot hear you.
You're quite low. Just be close to the mic.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. The question that I asked is pertaining to the aisles, right? So an aisle
Yes.
can have, you can have narrow aisles, and then you'll have larger aisles if you have like fork
Uh-huh.
equipment that you need to obviously unpack for larger items. But what would take precedence between aisle layout with regards to the sizing? I know it's determined by what stock you keep, but
Mhm.
narrower aisles would allow you to have more stock. So I would like to know, would that be the most efficient, keeping a higher amount of stock, or is it just um, the easiest access or accessibility to the stock?
No, okay. So like I said, this is a question which we can discuss, but let me answer you. You know what happens with the aisles? This is the reason why I said it all depends with what you want. Because you can create a very narrow aisle, then you obstruct the movement of mechanical handling equipment, the efficient movement of a mechanical handling equipment from accessibility of the items. That equally means that you have not done yourself any very good favor. I would imagine if you take like a forklift, for example, then you tried to move in and around a retail shop aisle. Equally means that is very impossible, that it becomes impassable, right? But that is an issue to do with mechanical handling equipment in accordance to what type of commodities are you or what type of inventory are you managing. But there's a certain aisle where maybe in a food moving, let me just continue using the food warehouse or stores. But the more they keep narrow aisles, the more they maintain more racks and more items which needs to be shelving are also holding in the same warehouse, you see. So actually the question on the aisles, they can ask you that way, but it's rare. They'll give you a description in nature of how things are moving in an aisle. Yes, there is some standards according to the measurements of aisles, depending with what type of warehouse it is, but they'll give you like a scenario of some sort in according to that. Then they can pick you to say what will be the best aisle for you, what would be the most efficient aisle in terms of such scenario. So like I said, the aisles will also depend with the model of how the warehouse has been arranged. How will be the U-shaped will go, how will be the fan through will go, how will be the Harrington will be go, and how will be also the fan shape, the narrow aisle layout, also the issue of, like I said, how long should the picker move to pick a product from where he is starting the journey and to the issuing bay. So it will also depends with those factors in consideration. But the book can state any form of aisle to say this is the most efficient one. I'm not trying to dispute that. But in according to any practice in any way, there is different aisle spaces depending what type of warehouse are you running. But if the book says U-shape, I will not disagree with that, depending with the reasons given. If in a U-shaped warehouse design, if the book says in a fan-shaped design, I will not disagree with that. If the book says it's a herringbone, I will not disagree with that, because it is the arrangement in according to justification of say what type of warehouse are you operating. The other question says, can you please explain more about 30 bin? 30 bin, the issue is 2-bin system. The 2-bin system is a warehousing system or is a stores controlling system, which is normally used on small items, especially in a workshop area, assuming that you are using bolts and nuts. So you'll be having 2 bins. They are filled up. Then the one which is on the front is the one which is being used off. So while it's the one at the front is being used off, it equally means that the 30 bin is being prepared for it to come again to complement the production system on the production line. So if the first bin has been finished or emptied, it is taken off, then the second bin comes on as the first bin, then the third bin will be brought in to complement the one bin which has been left on the production side. So the third bin will come in the stock replenishment system. The third bin will come in stock replenishment system, with which the operational system need to recognize it as a stock replenishment method in the production line. And it's normally very useful when we are using or when we are in a workshop system setup. Assuming that you are Toyota, you are making a lot of Toyota Corollas and you are doing them for Bolt, or you are doing them for, there's a ready order for Uber in any case. So the two bin system will be brought in to say on the production line, there's two bins, then the first bin start to be used. Then the moment it's emptied, the second bin comes the first bin, then the third bin comes in the second bin. So the continuous process flow of those bins rotating will go on and on and on until the production line has been finished. That's the two bin system, and the third bin comes in to complement as a stock replenishment system in the binning system. However, the working environment there, if we are using JIT, if we are using JIT in the two bin system as a method of complementing, you might see that Kanban will come in as a method of efficient flow of those two binning systems. So Kanban, with the use of EDI, electronic data interchange, the first bin, when it's about to be emptied, it triggers back with a light or whatever method to the supply store to say the bin is about to be finished. So make the third bin very ready. So the flow will go in and go out circularly, and all the production line will be moving smoothly. That will be the third bin in according to two bin system. What is imperative for a product code to comply with international standards? What is it imperative for product codes to comply with international standards? I would say yes, but depending on the justification. Why do I say yes? You know, always like in our operational system nowadays, there's a lot of issues to do with cyber crimes. There's a lot of issues to do with triple bottom line. That is the issues to do with environment. There's also the issues to do with tracking system, that's telematics, as we go by. So the international standards will set a uniform measure in accordance to standard specifications of the coding system. And thereby, if there is a uniform measure and certification, it makes easier to dictate where there is some tendencies of misuse or some tendencies of hacking or some tendencies of phishing. And therefore, if there is a uniform standard measure of but the standard measure now will not be practically implied and known by you to say there's a standard measure, but there's an industrial measure. So the industrial measure will bring in as a standard measure. Let's assume you are in the oil manufacturing, and therefore every oil product with which every car manufacturer used is according to the OPEC specifications, and every coding system is according to OPEC specifications. That equally means that is industrial measure. OPEC also has got an obligation to meet certain industrial and international standards for them to use the coding system, be it RFID, be it the coding system. Like if you look on the Americans, on the Europeans, they use what we call EAN. EAN, which is the European article number. It equally means that in Europe themselves, they set a certain standard in accordance with the coding system. And hence, anything which is suspicious within the coding system and the batching and the controlling system and the supply stream is easily detected on the process. So you would rather see that this is the reason why you see sometimes they will tell you that there's a product which is trying to use a brand for Tiger Brands. It's not a brand for Tiger Brand. It is a counterfeit product, is according, or maybe a batch of a certain product is not meeting some certain quality standards. Let's assume it's food, fish, as a in tinning factory. Then they will be able to track it wherever it is. It is delivered in Zimbabwe, it is delivered in Malawi, Nigeria, Ukraine, wherever. They'll be able to do that because there is a code there with which they can also say batch from batch number so much to batch number so much is a product which has missed a certain quality expectations in the production line, and they can be easily tracked and brought back through what we call reverse logistics. So it's very imperative, but you need to follow along to the industry specifications. The industry specifications is the one which falls to industry standards or to international standards as per se. What is the difference between packing and packaging? What is the difference between packing and packaging? Right. Packing and packaging, to me, there's a slim difference there. Patching and packaging, to me, there's a slight difference there. Food for thought. Food for thought. Food for thought. Food for thought. Packaging actually would depend on the primary considerations. Packaging, that would depend on the primary considerations and the primary nature of the product. That would be the size, the fragility, the objective of what you want to do. But now, that's packaging. Then packing becomes as a secondary component to the product, maybe to defend it from damage. Let me take an example of a Samsung TV. If you look on Samsung, the first thing they do on the TV is to have that is it looks like a plastic, but it's like a fragile plastic of some sort, which is the TV is taken in. Then there's those voids, which they normally try to make sure that the TV, when it's in the cardboard box, it doesn't shake to the right, to the left, to the back and forth. That will be like the guides which has been put there. Then the secondary packing now is the cardboard box, which is just outside there. So if we look on these things, packaging will be the primary factor of securing the product. Then packaging will be coming in as a secondary factor such that it avoids the product from a damage. Let's hope I have answered you well. Then anonymous attendee says, meaning consignment stocking and vendor management in fact are not the same. True, they are not the same. Consignment stock, sorry, this anonymous attendee says consignment stocking and vendor management are not the same. That's very true. Consignment stocking is an arrangement with which you can make as a bar between buyer and supplier. Then the stocks are kept at the buyer's place. Then they will replenish as they go. Then vendor managed inventory is now where the arrangement, the stocks are kept at the supplier's place and the buyer will use them as per wish at any given time. That's what it means. Then Osle and Chiduku says, is it necessary to know ISO standard codes? Is it necessary to know ISO standard codes? That's very true. If you look on the ISO issues, ISO standard codes, they are very, very important. I would speak of the general ISO things. If I say ISO 9001, you must know that I'm talking about standards according to quality. If I say ISO 14001, you must understand that I'm talking about environment. If I say ISO 31000, you must know that I'm talking about risk management. If I say ISO 18000, you must talk about public accountability. If I say ISO 18602, I'm talking about packaging according to the environment. ISO 18603, I'm talking about reusing packaging system. So ISO or international standards, as they are being driven, they are very, very important and they must be known. Unfortunately, most of the ISO standards which they might see in this book, they might be well out of reach in according to our standing, to our own understanding with our own local operational systems. But at least if we know the basics ISO matters, we are kept a loop in terms of questioning technique. But I would encourage you also to know about those ISO standard codes. They are very, very, very important. If I'm talking about protective clothing, that becomes ISO 45001, or the signs in any safety factory, you must know that this is what it means in according to the ISO. Especially when we're talking about L4M7, it's all about ISOs in according to packaging, environment, and maybe issues to do with quality standards. Thank you, Chidukun. Then there is anonymous attendee. Can you accept the concept of triple bottom line? Can you explain the issue of triple bottom line? Triple bottom line is a concept in issues to drive the issue to do with sustainability. What is sustainability? Is smart working with efficient mind, but bearing to have an economic benefit in future or all-round benefit in future. So it will be like 360 benefit in future. So triple bottom line, as it is said, you need to understand that there are three concepts being driven by triple bottom line. And I normally drive it as three P's. What is three P's? There is, you must take example of the planet, which is the issues to do with ecological system. Then we must take an example of the people. What are the people? Ourselves. Health and safety, we are working in an inventory shop, or we are working in the warehouse, or the issues to do with human rights. Nowadays, there's the issue to do with modern slavery, with the regulation of the European Union of 2015. Then lastly, even if you are going to do whatever the two happens, but understand that you are there to make profit. So now, driving the concept of the triple bottom line, you would understand if you are talking about the planet, let's talk about the planet, the environment, the ecological considerations like self-disposal, issues to do with recycling, redoing it, rethinking, consideration like I'm talking about self-disposal. I would assume someone in the construction sector there. There's a lot of tar product residue you need to dispose. How do you dispose it? If I'm familiar with the South African environment ways, there's those companies which are like Drizzt. A lot of people who have contracts with them for the self-disposal. Why should we have self-disposal? Is the issue to do with the planet. If we go to the seas, those who are near the seas, even if those who are near the dams, wherever you are, there's a lot of plastic being thrown in the sea, plastic being thrown in the river, and they affects the living standards of the fish. There's a time where I found it was one of the big fish, which I even don't know the name, which has died in Cape Town there about 2-3 months ago. And it is purported to say it had been swallowed in plastic. That becomes the issues to do cater for the environment. So disposal as part of the environment is also very important. Another issue is to do with besides the planet, is to do with the people. The people is the human rights, the issues to do with modern slavery, health and safety at work. But at the end of the day, you need to make profit. Profit will be driven in form of economy. So in other ways, planet, sometimes you find it is driven as environment. Then people, it is driven as health and safety and human rights. Then profit is driven as economic factors. But should I want anonymous attendee, please, to show your name well written, and we also need to know you. Otherwise, I might not answer your question because I'm not so sure who are you as an anonymous attendee and why do you want to be anonymous? Yet I'm, as a facilitator here, I even introduce you my name, my contacts and everything. I'm not so sure why do you want to be anonymous. Moderators, especially from CIPS, allow me not to answer this question from anonymous attendee. Thank you. Ted Liseshwile says, when you get to chapter 3, can you please illustrate to calculate total cost of ownership, whole life costing from acquisition cost to disposal, because the previous exam had at least 3 questions on this and they gave a scenario and they'd asked you to calculate. Thank you, I'll do that. Anonymous attendee, please, I'm not going to answer anymore. Anonymous attendee, please let us know you. CIPS colleagues, can you control me with the anonymous attendee? I wish to.
No, Mr. Simuka, I think that's fine. We can just keep the questions and then we will engage the students that are also part of the, so you're welcome to continue.
Yeah, anonymous attendee, please sort out your issues. Then Ted Leseswa say, can you please have page number references as we going along to help us note the tutor's advisory properly? If I go page by page to say this one, you find it on that page, this one, we will spend the whole of the day. But what I would advise you is to say, when we are talking, for example, Bullwhip, just to go to the index page, which is the index page. If you go to the index page, which is from the glossary and the index page, if you just go there on Bullwhip Effect, you would find that it is 112. So whilst I'm explaining, maybe you want to proofread, you just go on 112, then start to read about the Bullwhip Effect there. I'm just using it from my head, but sometimes I can refer it from the page numbers. But if each and every question, I'm going back to the book, I'm really sorry. We will take the whole day then, because I will be all say to say, let's go to page 12, then we start to read. Then after that, I will explain. That equally means that we are going to take the whole day. But whilst I'm explaining a question which says maybe someone is asked about the Bullwhip effect, can you just go to your index, make a reference, then you can also follow along as I explain. Palesa Molcheng says, what are the main methods used in regard to decision made about storage facilities and locations? I think, Palesa says, what are the main methods used in regard to the decision made about storage facilities and storage locations? From the way I'm seeing this question, it wants to say, what are the considerations made in terms of the storage facility design and the storage location? If you find out about the storage location design, you need to consider one, the first important thing to consider in any given issue is about cost considerations. Cost considerations, I am talking of what do you need to consider, what is your budget in accordance to what you want to build in accordance to the warehouse you want. So the design always on both, let's talk about the cost. But according to the costs, sorry, I'm not answering live, but let me start. So I think I've gone to another question. Sorry, let me go back to Palesa. Palesa, sorry, let me go back to your question. So when you are talking about decisions you make according to storage facilities, I think you are talking about the storage design or storage features. Okay, let me talk about design, then I go to facilities. So storage design, you need to consider first, what is your budget? But according to the budget, let's talk about, Are you going to have a single floor or you're going to have a multi-floor? Are you going to have, what is the ventilation? And according to the area where you are staying, where you are building the warehouse, what is the accessibility to the type of mechanical handling equipment are you going to use? Are you going to use a forklift? Are you going to have cantilever way of setting things? Are you going to have tracking, the rail trackings? Is going to be a cantilever? What is the flow? Is it going to have a rough flow or you are going to have a smooth flow? What is the consideration to the issues to do with goods in and goods out? That's receiving and issuing out. What are also the considerations to do with windows actually and doors? Because some windows and doors will determine the dampness of the site and also the safe efficiency of, because sometimes in the warehouse is very important, not sometimes, it's very important. Because you would find out that sometimes if the warehouse doesn't have enough windows, I would imagine you are in a house, right? It doesn't have ventilation system, it doesn't have air vents, and you are closed all the windows, and you are in there, and you just locked everything. You'd find out in the morning, you might find out the windows are sweating. What is that? It's causing dampness. That is the issues to consider with according to the design. But the facilities, as the way you have explained it, it is all about the issues to do with now in the facilities arena. How then do you want the flow of the inventory itself? So the aisles, the racking system, the movement of the pickers, and also what type of inventory management system are you going to have fixed inventory? Are you going to have fixed mechanical handling equipment, for example, a crane, or you are going to have a mobile product, which is maybe a forklift, or you are going to use like wreckers and all those things. That will define the facilities. But the location itself, this is the explanation I made at first to say, where does you want it to be? Do you want it to be in Gauteng? Do you want it to be in Zimbabwe? So what, in according to that, do you want it to be in the location in Nigeria? You want it to be in Europe? So what will be the considerations? First thing again is the budget. So sometimes when you are doing about the location, you need to develop what we call a case study, which is like a business case. A business case where you're talking about the cost of the location, availability of accessibility of main transport systems. Sometimes rail is efficient, sometimes road is efficient, or sometimes what type of movement is efficient to you. Are you going to use a multimodal type of transportation system? Availability of staff in the location. Like for example, if you are located somewhere, is there an accessibility of people to employ? Nature of items to be stored? Is it a warehouse in terms of a hardware? Is it a warehouse in terms of a food warehouse? Accessibility to transport and infrastructure. And also you're convenient to customers. The customers must be also well locating you wherever you are. It's quite important. You do not want to run a warehouse which is in standalone, because we are saying we are no longer operating what we call closed supply chain business of operation, but let's operate what we call open supply chain business of operations, where everyone is accessible to your services or to your products at any given time. That is Palesa. I have answered you. Then Bafi, you also come, should all barcodes be registered with industry regulator? Should all barcodes be registered with industry regulator? Not all can be registered with industry regulator, but barcodes, if you want to run them smoothly and with the uniformity, industry regulators must be well aware of the barcoding system. Why am I saying so? It might be, as of now, we might find out that the barcodes might be different depending with any of the manufacturers. But moving forward, in terms of the cyber crimes, in terms of the hacking systems, in terms of the counterfeit products, it is very, very important to cover the consumer of the products in accordance to the industry regulations. Who would not want to fall under industry regulations? The answer is equally no, because you want also to have an industry backup whenever you are operating. But you would find out, like, ceteris paribus, things being normal in a certain environment where people feel like they need to be independent. Some barcodes, you might find out that they are not complying with industry regulations. But should we feel like you are not doing that? But what is the advantage? The advantage will be from nothing to none. But following under industry standards might be it is very helpful for you to have an identity wherever you are. But I'm not saying all barcodes must fall under industry standards, but industry standards might make things easier for you to fall under international standards as well. So the world becoming a global village, barcodes needs to be internationally recognized or need to be internationally falling under industry standards. So if you go on page 38, it well explains industry standard codes are well established. In some cases, these might have some origins with original equipment manufacturer or a supplier. In other cases, industry standards can have been created as part of quality performance and conformance to standards documentation. So this is my advice: industry standards, they must fall under industry regulator. But should there be a flexibility? You may not, but in according to where we are going with the global supply chain, let them fall under industry regulator. Thank you, Bafi. Nomvuyo Kefa says, hello, can you please summarize chapter 1.1, purpose and impact of stores warehouse designs? What are the important points to consider and not for in the exams? Moderator, should I go for this one? Moderator, I think you are muted. Moderator.
Mr. Simuka?
Nomvuyo can say, can you please summarize chapter 1.1?
Okay.
Purpose, impact, stores, warehouse design, and what are the important points to note for the exams? And what's my time to chapter 1? Am I still along the line?
According to our initial plan, we just needed to just take a 10-minute break. Say be back by 16:45.
And we'll be discussing chapter.
And we'll be moving to chapter. Chapter, we've done 1, so we want to wrap up the learning outcome 3. Move to learning outcome 3 quick after the break, and last questions and wrap up session.
So am I still in line with chapter 1? Approximately
you've gone past, so we need to be moving to, you need to cover 2 and 3 now.
Yeah, this is the reason why I asked. No, I think this question needs a lot of attention. I'm not trying to run away from it, but considering the time, if I summarize the whole of chapter 1, explain the impacts, the stores and warehouse designs, which I was explaining before, and what are the important issues to consider. I think I would deprive of other colleagues for chapter 2 and 3. But what I want you to note in chapter 1 is understand the issues to do with warehouse design and warehouse location. That's chapter 1. Warehouse designs and warehouse location. Then what is the other issue is what influence the facility location. That is like a quantitative analysis and qualitative analysis in terms of warehouse solutions. Where I'm saying warehouse solutions, I'm talking about the distribution points. Distribution points you might make centralized and decentralized. Centralized, I'm saying everything is put in Gauteng, or everything is put in central in Joburg. Then whoever is in Northwest, in KZN, in Limpopo, in wherever, they will take it from Joburg. That is centralized. When I'm saying decentralized, that equally means that everyone, wherever he is, things are being well distributed. Then also what you must be very careful of is the issue of the efficient systems in according to aisles, like Uwe has been asked, and also what is the difference between a stockyard and the normal stores. The stockyard, where we always find cars being there, where we find always like timber, that becomes a stockyard. And you find out that the flooring in stockyard and the flooring in a normal storage warehouse or stores is totally different. Factors which influence also the store's layout in terms of racking aisles is also important. The type of warehouse in terms of the shape, where goods in and goods out, where are they located, and the door is also important. The issue of spacing, floor spacing, and flexibility in warehouse is, you need to be very careful about them. The efficient flow, I've also mentioned space utilization. That is what I called about aisles, narrow aisles and wider aisles. It's also very important. But what you must also know on this topic is the basis of you understanding the whole of the module. I'm very sorry you asked this question late, but I should have assisted quite better than the way I have done it. There's quite a lot of questions according to chapter 1, but let me call it off for those who still have got questions. I think you posted them very late. There's Ellen Madzaga. Please be so kind and explain closed loop and open loop recycling. Closed loop recycling, we are saying in the closed loop, let's take for example, you are in the you are in the battery factory. In the battery factory, like what is Tesla doing? They take all the old batteries which are no longer efficient for them, they recycle them and bring another battery out of the recycled products for batteries. That's closed loop. Open loop, like for example, timber. We take timber, we do furniture. Then after we have done furniture, the timber sheaves, we may take them for gardening. Take them for gardening, put them in the garden. We make sure that there is what we call manure or mulching in the garden. After some time, we have after watering, they can also decay and support other ecological systems from the soil. That becomes open loop recycling. Let me end here for chapter 1. Then next we go to chapter 2. Thank you, moderator. Just remind me what minutes should we take, but taking cognizance that we have already overlapped from chapter 1, so that we move to chapter 2. Let's consider that way for the time.
We can just take a 5-minute leg stretch and we'll resume at quarter to, no, let's say make it 10 minutes at 10 to 5. Is
10
that
to 5.
Okay? Yeah.
I'm okay with that. For those colleagues who are sending questions to the chat box, I'm not able to answer you directly from the chat box, but let's use the Q&A facility. I'm able to answer you well from that. Thank you, colleagues. Let's take a break. Thank you. Let's move to chapter 2. Like I indicated at first, you need to understand how to maneuver using this book. So chapter 2 is one of the interesting chapters of my life, and I like the chapter. It talks about the elements of effective inventory control systems. We always talk about cost reduction. We'll talk about efficient and effective inventory control systems. But what is it really like effective inventory control systems? So we're going to talk about it in chapter 2. So chapter 2 is talking about 2.1. It talks about 2.1. It talks about.
Excuse me, I've been raising my hand.
Okay, Emily, you can go ahead. I haven't seen you, sorry.
Okay, let me lower it down. Okay, I don't know if Sari from CIPS South Africa, is she still on the platform?
Is there any issue you want to address with her?
I'm writing this subject that we are busy currently now on Monday, and it has been cancelled when I went to my CIPS now.
Okay, I think
but
can you speak to Sari? May I suggest that you speak to them, and let's continue with the lecture, because irrespective of all that, the revision must still be done. Okay, thank you.
Right, colleagues, let's not be discouraged with the cancellation and we feel like, hey, let me go, because still the exam is coming. So you might not have the opportunity for you to get again a revision like this one, which has been extended to us by CIPS. So now, chapter 2.1 talks about the difference between classification of inventory. That's where the issue of A, B, C comes in. That's where the Kraujik matrix can be also one of those principles you can use in the classification of inventory. What is direct stock and indirect? What is issues to do with WIP, work in progress, all those things. So we talk about opening stock, closing stock, obsolescence, redundant, direct, indirect stock, ABC, dependent, independent demand. And 2.2 talk about the indirect and direct way of holding stock. What is the issue there is to talk about acquisition cost versus holding. Stock of stock outs, options to reduce or mitigating negative impacts to stock. That's like more of waste management. Then 2.3 talks about the techniques of inventory, subjective and objective forecasting, reorder quantity levels, MRP 1, MRP 2, ERP, just-in-time, lean management, agility, inventory control systems, lead times, etc., etc., etc. I don't want to take much of this time because I'm seeing questions are more than what is anticipated for me to talk. But let me open the floor for discussions. Questions about chapter 2. Questions about chapter 2. Let me go on Q&A. Questions about chapter 2. Right, let me continue whilst people are picking up chapter 2. But there's my sister, she's called Cornelia Shilongo. She says, kindly explain the concept of preliminary and placement costs. Now, costs in terms of acquiring inventory, it's diverse, it's so huge. So let me try to summarize the types of cost or the elements of cost in inventory acquisition. We have got what we call pre-acquisition cost, which I can even call preliminary costs, or they can be preliminary processes. What are those preliminary costs or processes? We may talk of issues to do with the cost for sourcing. That's like market engagement, where you do product profiling, where you also do market analysis. That's a preliminary cost. We can also talk about research, where you need to understand with technical design how effective your product is to the market, even you thrown the product to the market. That is more of like a research you need to do. That is more of like market engagement as well. We can talk of issues to do with business case. The business case is deciding whether to proceed this way or to proceed this way. And you also need to devise what we call business continuity planning, BCP. We are saying if the product fails to bring impact to the market, what will be the fallback position in accordance with that? These are preliminary costs. But now, when I talk about placement costs, normally I'll talk them as acquisition costs. What are those acquisition costs? We may talk about the price of the commodity. We may talk about the transportation of the commodity. We may talk about the installation of the commodity. We may talk about the training facilities of how to use the machine if it's a machine. We may talk about operations. We may talk about maintenance. All those things, they can be acquisition cost. But sometimes you might see them, other books might say acquisition cost. Then after acquisition cost, a layer down, they may talk of operations cost, like a different step altogether. It's not a matter. You just take, like, for example, if there is a difference there, when there's operations cost, you may talk about maintenance. Maintenance, because we've got two methods of maintenance. We've got proactive maintenance and the reactive maintenance. What I'm talking about proactive maintenance, we can talk about corrective measures, that's the repair, and the scheduled maintenance, which is more of like a service. Assuming that there is a plant or a machine, sometimes there's a breakdown, then you need to repair. But there's sometimes where you need just to maintain it. You need to go for it to have a downtime where you need to take the machine for service, or you need to have an attention for service. That is proactive maintenance. So you find out that this is part of operations, including things like commissioning. Therefore, there's what we call post now. Post-acquisition. What are the post-acquisition issues or costs? We may talk about issues to do with the dismantling. Dismantling is like, that is a machine. You need to take off the bolts, you put each and every part on its own, you go ahead and try to dismantle all the whole of the machine. Then lastly, the machine has to be disposed. Is it going to be disposed as a scrap, or is it going to be disposed through an auction system, or is it going to be disposed with, maybe you want to donate it, maybe for charity through your corporate social responsibility, your corporate social responsibility policy. That becomes like, this is the whole of the total cost of ownership method, right? So you'd find out that on these methods, so the preliminary costs these are the costs which you normally incur before you acquire the commodity or before you acquire the machine. Then the placement cost, these are the costs which are directly associated in the acquisition position of the commodity or the machine, if you want to mean it. A very good example we might give there is a machine for you to understand how these things would work in. I'm seeing there's a person there from who I've answered this one. The preliminary. Anonymous, did you sort out your issues? Anonymous, did you sort out your issues?
Mr. Simuka, I think you can just proceed with the next question. We only have just less than an hour left, so we just need to compress all that is outstanding and wrap up the
open loop and closed loop. Okay, fine. Open loop and closed loop. I have answered this one. Let me talk about Eoq formula referring to examples. Eoq, what would you please explain with the Eoq formula in referring to examples? That is Mataliso Chipeta. Eoq is an economic order quantity. What is really economic order quantity? An economic order quantity is a driven, is a leveraging factor with ordering stock and holding stock. So it's an issue of debating the issues to do with ordering stock and holding stock. Ordering stock and holding stock. So we must, the issue there is, it's a stock replenishment method, which we can use in terms of inventory control system. But if we go on page 114, on this one, let me give you an illustration on 114, and you also, those who have got books, let's go on 114. So economic order quantity, like I explained, it is an issue where you need to leverage whether should you hold stock or you should order when you want it. So now, you would note that an economic order quantity is a method which is born out of fixed quantity ordering. But if you check on fixed order quantity ordering, it's a method which is normally used where demand is not constant. Where demand is not what? Constant. But each EOQ, with EOQ, it has got some assumptions which normally can drive you to another way. The issues, it can assume to say the number of demand in the stock line is required over a specific period of time. It can be constant of that some sort, or the purchase lead time is known, and all those things. But let me go to the real issues to do with the formula. So the formula of EOQ, it says Q is equals to Q is equals to square root of 2 ds over h, meaning to say the Q, D, S, and H must be explained in according to the what do they respond. Q would represent the units of the product being economic ordered. Then the D would represent the demand of the units, and normally it's done annually. Then the S is the ordering cost per every order whenever you are ordering. Then the H is carrying cost as per unit. That equally means is the holding cost. So using the example which is in the book, which I would not want to read always as it is being written, but I would want to bring to your attention to say, if you are substituting every alphabetical word there, or every alphabetical letter, sorry, with their quantity in according to the example which is given on 114, it equally means that we are saying square root of 2. But what is our D is demand often. According to the small case study there, our D is 1,200 times what? Times the S. What is S? Is the ordering cost. And the every ordering cost, and according to the case study there, becomes 50. And you'd find out that there are some small brackets, and they are the bigger brackets, then divided by 3. 3 is what is part of the H, which is holding stock or holding cost, sorry, holding cost. So when we are calculating, what I want to emphasize is we start calculating the figures in bracketed in the small brackets. So how do we start calculating? Starting with the figures in bracketed in the small brackets. So how do we start? We are going to say,
Mr. Simuka, may I just request that you come closer to the mic as well?
Oh, okay.
Keeps fading. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So we start calculating with the figures bracketed in the small brackets, which equally means we are going to say 1,200 times 2. That's 1,200 times 2, which is going to create a times the 51, which is going to create to bring us to about 120,000, then divided by 3. Why do we need to first deal with something in the small bracket, as is said? Is the first preference if the arithmetic, our basic arithmetic when we were doing the early secondary terms where we say board mass. It equally means that brackets off. So we are trying to create an atmosphere where we need to find out the solution from the small bracket. Then we go to the to have now the requirements of the bigger bracket. So if you look on the equation, as it said, EOQ square root of 2 times 1,200 times $50, then the bracket is closed. Then divided by 3, then the bigger bracket comes in. So what it means is, in my emphasis, in according to that example, if we follow it up, we first deal with 2 times 1,200 times 50. We first resolve that. And if you do that, it will take us to 120,000, then divided by 3, which equally means that we are looking for a square root of 40,000. Then the square root of 40,000, it equally means that our economic order quantity is always 200 per every given requisition or request we are making. Now, EOQ, what you must be very mindful of is a balance or a leverage between us ordering when the stock is required versus holding the stock in our warehouse. That's EOQ. And the example I might give, I might just encourage you, Makaliso Chipeta, to say, can you please go back to page 114 of the book? That example is well illustrated. And this is the reason why I said at first, let us use the calculators. It might become as that way and it might need calculation. Natasha Adolfo, it says, what is the value stream and what does it relate to lean supply chain? A value stream, if the word says, if you look on the Potter's value chain, it has got some primary activities and some secondary activities. So every process in supply chain starts from the upstream going to the downstream. So when I'm using Potter's value chain as an example, you would find out that there's an inbound where the raw material is supplied. There's the transformation or manufacturing where the raw material has been turned into usable goods or semi-usable goods. Then we moved into outbound where there is bulk storage or warehousing. We move into marketing and sales. That's like distribution and retailing. Then we move into services. Services, that's consumerization. So if you look on this flow from the upstream going to the downstream, or from inbound to the consumerization, yeah, you would find out that there are some certain stages and processes which follow each other, or which complement each other, or which aligns each other. So if we say value stream, we are saying now, how do we create value at each and every process as we go by until the consumer also enjoys the value? So you'd find out that using Potter's value chain as an example, in inbound, we are saying we need procurement, we need technology, we human resource, we need infrastructure. So we also, when we move to manufacturing, the same. We move to inbound, the same. We need to marketing and sales, the same. We also need procurement, we need also infrastructure, we need technical design, we need human resource, until to the last person. So in the process of doing that, be in mind to bring lean principle. That's the issue of eliminating waste, and agility. That's the issue of flexibility. So the issue of flexibility and agility will be there. So sometimes we will find out that there's value engineering, there's value analysis, there's also like price engineering going through. So what we are saying by value stream, we are saying at each and every step of the supply chain, let's create a value out of that. Then the consumer must also enjoy the value. Even if we are talking about reverse logistics in the procurement or the inventory management system, along the way, you would find out if it is done with a proper value preposition going down to the consumerization, and also the reverse logistics way will not even trouble you because there's value already created in the product. So the value sources, the value creation sources, there are so many: total life cost of ownership, value engineering, value analysis, quality concept, issues to do with environmental disposal, all those issues. At the end of the day, they create value for yourself. So the relationship there is for us to realize value. Let's also be lean. In the lean supply chain, we're saying, let's work with the least possible, but to maximum capacity with waste management. If you talk about ONO 7 sources of waste, we're talking about, let's understand what are the delays in the transportation. Let's avoid a lot of handling in the system. Let's avoid a lot of waiting. All those things. There's a lot of sources of waste in the value stream. So the value stream must realize the value creation as it go by. Then there is Nina Mukungu. What is the difference between redundant stock and absolute stock? What is the difference between redundant stock and absolute stock? A redundant stock is a stock which is excessive. Redundant stock which is excessive, or which might be not needed needlessly by the institution, but at times can be serviceable, or it can be used by the other persons. Let's take, for example, for those, I know a lot of people follow up with soccer then. There's a player with which the coach can say, we no longer need your services. Your services are redundant. It doesn't necessarily mean that that player is not needed by another club. Sergio Ramos was said, oh, your services are redundant at Real Madrid. But in PSG, when he signed in France, everyone was just in the street, he wants to see Sergio Ramos. But as a player, we had been said, your services are redundant at Real Madrid. So it equally means that your services are excessive. We no longer need them. But sometimes the inventory might be still serviceable. It is still usable by the other factors, or you may use them, but in a way which is not to the expectation of the turnover. Or you might dispose it at a loss, but at the same time, it is going to be useful for the other person. But when I'm talking about absolute stock, I'm talking of stock which is outdated in terms of its time usage. You'd find out there were those TVs which had got a lot of huge, long back, or those computers which had got a long back which you put on the table. You need to create about 30 centimeters or so because there's a back, and the back needs also to breathe. But if you look the current with the Internet of Things, we are going now to nano technology, where even the laptop is as small as whatever, or you might have even using your phone is very compatible to be like a laptop on its own. So absolute is something which is outdated in according to the timelines and usage. And most of the time, both redundant inventory and absolute inventory, they also use a lot of space for us. So let's make sure that we devise a disposable system to such inventory timelessly and also to the benefit of the institution at such given time. So you find out that space usage and space utilization in inventory management system is very important. So absolute stock and redundant stock, let's make sure that we act upon them on time before the institution incurs costs. Then can you explain more about the Delphi method, Kakushelo? The Delphi method, let me talk about research. Research is in two ways. Research can have an output of, we can do it using quantitative, we can do it qualitatively. Qualitatively is subjective. What do I mean qualitative subjective? It's based on opinions and suggestions. It's based on opinions and suggestions. Then we can do research quantitatively. Quantitatively, we are saying the research is based on statistics and figures. So now, there are some different statistical methods or research methods which falls under any of these I've explained before. Now, when we're talking about the Delphi method, what is it really about? Is a structured forecasting system which is based on the technique and contribution by experts of a different field. And it's more rigorous, and it's meant, the name came from a Greek orator or a Greek expert in terms of research who is called Delphi. And the response is encouraged to be reconsidered by also experts for it to be more of like more effective research method. So the exam normally will ask you to say the Delphi as a research method is a concept based on, your answer will be based on experts' contribution or experts' research. So now, this method is so rigorous. Why is it so rigorous? There is a technical input. Let me give you an example of the Delphi method, but a practical example I may talk of. Let's talk about the issue to do with coronavirus, which is COVID-19, which is the order of the day always. So if it started, who was even struggling, the World Health Organization, to struggle to say, how would they combat it? How would it go to spread? And what are the spreading methods? So experts had to sit down. They had to find out a research rigorously in terms of coronavirus, how it happened to Europe, how it happened to China, how is it affecting in America. They had to come up with also some remedies to that. Some of those remedies, they were effective. Some of those remedies, they are not effective. Some of them are still using them. But the experts is forecasted to say there is a first wave, there's a second wave, and there's a third wave. And truly it is going that way. So you'd find out like they also have to illustrate the efficacy of the vaccine and the jab. To say this one has got so much efficacy, this one has got so much efficacy. And the laboratory systems and testing systems have already been done with those experts. So I would categorize as one of another way of how the Delphi method can be well explained. You'll find out even the statistics in demography, in pie charts, in tabular systems. They represent, even in South Africa, here where I am, you'll see that the information is presented daily. Even there's an app for that. What is that? There's an expert people who came and study and make a research on the coronavirus and COVID-19. I would classify that as one of the Delphi method which has been used in that research. That's the Delphi. Right. Then there's Priska Chidi. Can I ask that you take us through the causes of obsolescence and redundancy to avoid them? Right. So let's talk about the issues to do with redundancy and what are the causes actually. I've explained them. The causes, it can be outdated in according to the regulation. The causes, it can be, they become redundant because the demand system was not effective. The product has become obsolete because it can be different reasons. It can be time frame. It can be the issue to do with the regulation. It can be the issues to do with the demand and supply versus in accordance with the bullwhip I was talking of, in accordance with the discrepancy and variance between the two. But how do we avoid redundancy and obsolescence? One, we must have proper researching and forecasting system, which is well effective and well grooved up. We must be also understand when and how to repeal regulations and policies such that we make use of the available material before we dispose them. We must be also having in plan the disposable methods and very flexible disposable method, very flexible disposable method, such that when we want to dispose those material, we dispose them in accordingly. Let me give you an example in the public sector. I'm a person who came up from the public sector environment. You would find out in the public sector, there are some certain things which have been used in the 90s, but they are still there. Still people, the board of survey had gone there, they've done the surveillance, they've recommended the disposable method, but there's one person who is just being awaited to sign the disposable report or the border survey report for the materials to be disposed of. So the disposable method must be also flexible, making sure that the products which has been outdated because of time, the product which become redundant because of the changes in demand and the supply, the issues to do with redundancy because there's some changes on the market features or a poor forecasting which has been made, are also disposed in according to the time. And we also have a benefit, though most of these items are sold at a loss or auctioned at a loss. Nina Mkungu, explain exponential weight and average method. This is one of my favorite discussion in my studies before. This one, I'll give you an example. Let me start with what we call average method. For those who have got pens, you can acknowledge that you have got pen and paper. Let's work together. Right, let's assume you want to predict for, you have got a consumption for January, which is 200. Therefore, you can also do the same from your side. January, we've got a prediction of 200 items. Let's say you are selling jeans, you are in fashion. February, there's 150. March, demand starts to tick, you've got 300. April, you've got 320. May, you have 375. June, you've got 415. Then you want to predict for July. Then you want to predict for July. If you are using what we call average method, simple moving average method, we are just saying, how many do we have? How many durations do we have? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got January, February, March, April, May, June. So we are just adding up the numbers. We are divided by 6. So we are saying 200 plus 150 plus 300 plus 320 plus 375 plus 415. Anyone who got the answer? Can you just unmute your mic and talk? Anyone who got an answer, can you just unmute your mic and talk?
At that 1.7.
Pardon?
Okay, it's 1,760.
Yes, 1,760. Let's divide it by 6. Thank you. It's Kingsley Musachwai. Let's go. 1,700 divided by 6.
Then we get 293.33.
293.33. 293, let's just round off 0.3. This is the answer of your demand for July. This is simple moving average. So whilst I'm moving with you, Kingsley, if I'm not mistaken, let's now, you'll be taking my instructions on a weighted average or exponential smoothing, then work together. So the first thing is, consider the most recent data. Consider the most recent data. So circle up the most recent data and give it to a number. Let's say June is 1, May is 2, April is 3, March is 4, February is 5, January is 6. This is how you are considering the most recent data. That's the first thing. Secondly, each and every demand at every month is allocated to a weight which is normally provided to you by economist or scientist. Each and every weight, each and every demand per every month is going to be given to you by economists or by experts, but sometimes you can be given it randomly. Therefore, give the most highest weight to the most recent data. So let's assume I'm giving you those weights. Let's say we have got weights given as 0.4, we've got weight given as 0.3, we've got weight given as 0.2, we've got weight is given as 0.1. And the weights, the total of where you must use the weights, they must be only equal to 1 as a whole number. The weights which you are going to consider in the calculations, they must be equal to 1 as a whole number. So let's work our weights. We have got 0.4, 4 plus, 3 plus, 2 plus, 1 is equals to 1. So these weights are enough for you to allocate. Now let's allocate the weight. Give the most highest weight to the most recent data. So let's talk. 1 can be given to which number? Or let's start with the highest weight. Let's start with the highest weight. The highest weight there is 0.4. So 0.4 is given to which weight? To which month? Okay, let me start. Maybe people did not understand me. Weights are normally given, and sometimes they can be given in random. The weights to be considered must be equal to 1 as a whole number, and give the most highest weight to the most recent data. So 0.4, we are going to allocate 0.4 to which month? Okay, fine.
July.
0.4 is going to be given to June because we're looking for July. So 0.4 is for June, 0.3 is for May, 0.2 is for April, 0.1 is for March. So let's calculate 415 times 0.4. 415 times 0.4, which is equals to 166, if I'm not mistaken. I'm just trying to move because time has already gone. Then we go to May, that's 375 times comma 3 is going to be 11112,5. Then I'm not so sure whether my calculations are correct here. 415, let me start 415 times comma 4, yeah, it's 166. Then for May is 375 comma 375 times comma 3, which is 112,5, 112,5. Then for April, we have got 320 times comma 2 is 64. Then for March is going to be 300 times comma 1, which is going to be 30. So at the end of the day, we have to add 166 plus 112,5 plus 64 plus 30. That will be our answer for exponential smoothing or weighted average. The issue is there will be some weights given to you, and the weights must be equal to a whole number 1, and consider the most highest weight to the most recent data. And the most important thing is consider the most recent data. And it is said to be more effective than weighted average. Madam Moderator, am I still on time?
Okay, we scheduled to finish at 6. There's one more question, and I'd suggest that you talk through the balance. We will not finish everything within the time, but we will just give it the best. So I
Kindly,
think you can,
okay, fine. Let me answer the last one. Sorry, Madam Moderator, sometimes I'll be rushed to the question because you had given me the instructions. Thank you, Madam Moderator, to keep this live. Kindly explain tail spend. Tail spend. If we are working in an environment, there is spend. Spend can be direct spend, it can be indirect spend, it can be overhead spend, and all those things as well. But in a normal operation, we are talking about tail spend. This is a spend which we normally not see by our own naked eyes, but it's there. And normally by the word saying tail, it is to the far end of the spend, and you are not going to understand it, how it works when you are not checking closely about it. So that is page 92. So let me give you an example of tail spend. Tail spend is not well managed, but it sometimes have 10 to 20% of the spend of each and every category. These are the spend, like for example, you are buying in any category, but whilst you are doing the tendering, you've got the time you spend on focusing on the tender, and you are being paid. There's printing, and you are being paid. You are going to present, to make some presentations, but they are being looked into. So tail spend, it's an indirect spend, but usually comes at the far end of the end product, and it's not directly involved in the practical element of product acquisition, but it's indirectly, and it's normally at the far end of the product in any procurement system. So you would find out that it's a small proportion, but it's their part of the spending. Because at times when we are procuring, or when we are in operations, so we don't always consider that there is printing, but printing is there. We don't consider that we use pens, but pens are there. We don't always consider that there is a time where you need to refresh, but your salary is not being taken off to say, because you were relaxing for the past 15 hours, you are not going to pay, but you are also being paid that. So in the product, in the building of a product, building it from the upstream going to the downstream of the product in the supply chain, there is an indirect spend which is normally associated with the product, but we don't actually see and actively see that is happening. That is what we call tail spend. And normally if we well manage tail spend, that's where one of the hanging fruit in terms of cost reduction or lean management in any inventory management system. Thank you. Should we break, Madam Moderator, or we move ahead with chapter 3? I'm comfortable moving ahead.
yes, please, yes.
Okay. Chapter 3 talks about, chapter 3 talks about issues to do with the concept of through life costs, the concept of through life costs. So 3.1 is analysis contributing to the factors when establishing total cost of ownership. Chapter 2 is comparing the factors when considering and building a total cost of ownership. Chapter 3 is modifying the contribution of elements of end-of-life costs. Now, there is a question which I'm going through. Tedley Seshwai, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Your question says, when you get to chapter 3, can you please illustrate how to calculate total cost of ownership or whole life of acquisition to disposal? Because in the previous question, there was at least 3 questions, and they gave a scenario and asked you to calculate whole life of ownership. Now, follow me with these steps. I would allow you to unmute and talk to me wherever possible.
Okay.
Or interjecting me, I'm a very open person. Right. Now, when we're talking about whole life costing or total cost of ownership, I want you to follow these following steps. The first step is to identify pre-acquisition costs or preliminary costs. I've said it, but let me start again. So in the preliminary or pre-acquisition cost, there is sourcing there is a cost. There is market research there is a cost. There is developing a business case. A business case, to those who are not understanding, is more of like a project proposal of what you want to do, is a cost. There is cost in administering whatever you want to do. These are preliminary costs, but building up to a whole life costing. From there, you move to acquisition or replacement costs. Acquisition cost, we're talking about the price of the commodity. We're talking about the issue to do with the transportation of the commodity. We're talking about the issues to do with the training of how to use the machine, if it's a machine. We're talking about installation. Sometimes operations is there, maintenance, and commissioning. However, in other modules, you'd find out operations can be taken off and become stage number 3. And in the operations, if it is taken off, you would find out there are 2 main factors there. There is proactive maintenance and reactive maintenance. Proactive maintenance, we are talking about scheduled maintenance of the machine. Then reactive, we are talking about a repair of the machine when it's at breakdown. These are costs. Then lastly, at post-disposal or post-acquisition, you'd find out there's dismantling. You'd find out that there's dismantling and disposal. If you are still with me, remind me that page I was discussing with you like 2 days ago, where there's a tabulated information about this. Then I can also make reference. You are still around with me? Can you? Yes. Can you just reference me to that table, which we were discussing last time about this type of cost, as how they've been categorized such that we work with something, the colleagues are also able to identify them. So now, out of these costs, you would find out that at each and every level, there is these costs associated. So when you are calculating, just pull it through from pre-acquisition or preliminary cost.
Page 173.
Page
173.
173. For those who are still around, let's go on page 173. It's very helpful there. 173.
Yeah.
Or 173. For those who are around, let's go on page. Just a quick one on the 173. So if you look at these costs written there, pre-costs, then there is preliminary research, or all those things written there, until to the end of life cost. Any of them, they can be picked up to say, can you work what we call total cost of ownership? But what you must understand is preliminary cost, acquisition cost, operational cost, and the post-acquisition cost. And some things like they might come in as insurance, usage cost, consumable cost, and all those things, they can be factored. But in any given module, for L4M7, there is nothing like complicated calculations there. A scenario is just to understand which cost falls where. And sometimes it's only a matter of adding up whatever cost has been given. Did I answer you, my sister?
Yes, I would think so.
The best way you should have done is to just like maybe type the scenario, how it came, like then the cost categorization. Then I can assist you to say, I can assist everybody to say, let's calculate it using this way. Because the way it is, I don't have that scenario here, but what I've given you are the basic guidelines in terms of cost categorization, which holds up to form what we call total cost of ownership or whole life costing.
So I would assume this type of question, it doesn't have a formula. You should just know which ones do you add, which ones do you minus if you have to minus a certain cost.
Yes, because in any given method, if you have found any formula in terms of like what we do on EOQ or fixed order quantity or maximum stock levels, you can direct me, but it's rare for you to have a formula to that. It's just like a scenario, then you know where to add and where to subtract.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Back again, anonymous. What's the resolution with the anonymous? The questions are 2 men from anonymous. While where the moderators are deciding on anonymous, let me talk about Nina Mukungwa. What is the actual difference between redundant and absolute stock? I talked about it. I'm not repeating this one. The difference is redundant is excessive. It's becoming excessive because it's no longer wanted. Then absolute is something which has gone out of favor because of, it might be through legislation or time, but either of them can be usable or serviceable at any nature, at any given time or demand by other person. Then Ellen Madzaga, please explain, I've done this, closed loop and open loop. I've explained this. Where I said closed loop, it can be, it is a system whereby a certain product, closed loop, is a system of whereby a certain product is recycled to make an identical or similar product from the waste product it used to be. A battery, an old battery material forming up to make up another new battery. But in open loop, there is a flexibility of a material which is said to be disposed, but can be used to form up another thing. For example, the pallets timber can be used to create another disposable product in form of, maybe, let's say, it has been recycled to make a chair, or the wood shelves have been used for manuring in a garden, or for making up a mulching, the wood shelves themselves for mulching in the garden. That is open loop. The product is flexible to form another product, even different from what it used to be at first. What is the difference between lease or hire when I'm a buyer? What is the difference between lease or hire? Lease or hire is the same. Lease or hire is the same. You are leasing, it means you are getting the service from someone, or you are hiring, it means that you are getting that service from someone, you are outsourcing. But what I can give as a difference is buying versus leasing or hiring. Buying versus leasing or hiring. It all depends how we want to use the word leasing. Normally the word leasing can be used in properties, or hire can be used in terms of maybe in fleet management. That's the only difference I can make of. But the concept is just the same. You are outsourcing, you are getting an outsourcer, a third party for the services it driven. But when you are a buyer, what you need to understand is what's the difference between leasing or hiring versus buying on your own or insourcing. And you would find out most of the time when you are insourcing, there is some differences or advantages on lease or hire as compared to buying or insourcing itself. So sometimes when you are leasing or hiring, it might be cheaper on short term, but very expensive on long term. But however, when buying, it might be very expensive on short term, but cheaper at long term. Because at short term, I imagine you want to buy a factory for the institution, it equally means that you need very, very huge capital. It equally means that you need to be so much capital intensive for you to buy. That's what I can say to that question. Explain the bill of material. That's Ethel Clara Waenera. Explain the bill of material. So MRP, that's normally where you find the bill of material or the bill of quantity whatsoever. When MRP 1, sorry, let me just have water. Let me try to explain from MRP. And it's normal MRP 1, but it won't be written as MRP 1. It will be written as MRP, but you need to be mindful that it's MRP 1. MRP 1 or MRP as it is written in the book, it has got most 4 important modules. You must be very careful, and it's an electronic running system. So MRP, it means material requirements planning. Listen to me here. And Ethel, if you are there, you can unmute and ask me where necessary. MRP 1 is material requirements planning. And it's not written MRP 1 in your book. It will be just written as MRP. Then MRP 2, with the Roman 2, the Roman numeral material, it means manufacture resource planning. Manufacture resource planning. Then it cascades through to ERP. So these 3 processes of inventory management systems are electronic, and it's an evolutionary process from MRP 1 to MRP 2 to ERP. Now, let me go back to MRP 1. MRP 1, it has got 4 important measures for it to work well. We've got what we call MPS, that's master planning schedule. The master planning schedule will start cascade to have the first module, which is, it might be B or M, bill of material. Then on another hand, we are having what we call the production schedule, which will be in place. Then on another end, we'll be having inventory status file. Inventory status file. Then the 3 need to generate a report out of the production, which is the management report, So what is bill of material? Bill of material is it's a module which consists of the required material in terms of the production. Then it is to specify the cost associated. Then this material and the sub material, they will drive in to say now, what will be the production schedule? The production schedule, now we're taking the material which has been there. Then we are saying, how much labor do we want? How much time do we want in this? And how are we going to schedule the production itself? Then we drive to say, inventory status file says, what is the raw material in the stores? What are the products in work in progress? And what are the end products? Then we generate what we call management reports at the end of the day. That's the MRP 1, but the bill of material, it's a consistency of material and the cost of material at a given production requirement. That's bill of material. Then they'd find out now to say, this MRP 1 is only focusing on narrow issues. So how do we do to involve other functions in the production lines? Then they come up with what we call MRP 2, which says, okay, fine, HR, what is your contribution? Finance, what's your contribution in according to this production schedule we've meant here? Marketing, what's your contribution? Technical design, what's your contribution? That's MRP 2. We're now focusing the integration of the resources from other functions. Then we drive it into ERP. What is ERP now? It's the disintegration of each and every cost component and factor it in the production line and find out what is the total cost of ownership of producing a product. That becomes MRP 1, MRP 2, and MRP 3. But basically, a bill of material is a module which expresses a material required in a certain production demand and also specify what are the costs associated into that. Now, In this inventory management systems, there's what we call independent demand and dependent demand. So if you look on independent demand, you'd find out that in the independent demand, we've got what we call fixed order quantity. We've got what we call there's fixed order quantity in according to quantity. There's that one which is according to time. Then there's also what we call EOQ. The three are normally what we call the inventory management systems in according to independent. Then what comes dependent demand, there are the issues to do with MRP1, MRP2, ERP going into JIT, assisted by Kanban, etc., etc., etc. Those are the inventory management systems and the stock replenishment methods we have in practical whenever we are buying. That's Eoq Formula. Then going to Kifilwe, which one is more effective, barcodes and RFID, and why? Which one is effective, barcodes and RFID, why? And I normally say also on this question, I know it depends with how agile are you and flexible are you in terms of the Internet of Things. That's where we are moving. The global, with the fourth industrial revolution currently, I would say RFID is more efficient. Why is more effective? Why do I so? It can be expensive for you to have an RFID system, but it's more efficient and effective because RFID, it's a complete system. It manages you the batching and the costing. It can manage you as a method of inventory management system or inventory control systems. You can use it in telemetrics. Telemetrics is like GPS, following up in terms of your stock movement. Like for example, the stocks, you are loading them in a truck, they are being transported from South Africa to Zimbabwe. You can as well follow them up using the GPS system, using the RFID tracking system. And also if you look, you can also use it as a security system. If we go into shops like Truworths, like Mikkels, like those big shops, if you find out there is a tag, which looks like a brown, like a tag of some sort, which is normally tagged, like, for example, on a cloth. The moment you just take it off from a shop, it starts to make a lot of noise. It is driven by the RFID system because it has got a tracker inside. But if you don't know, you are caught and you're found wanting. So I would feel like RFID is more effective, though it can be expensive for you to generate and also manage in the system or to have it. But with the issues to do with the globalization and the advancement of the Internet of Things, RFID is more effective, and barcodes are becoming more of traditional issues in the modern inventory management systems. Question is it higher, not short term, and then least long term? Like I said, listen to higher. I'm not seeing a very huge difference in them. It only depends which way do you want to use and where. Because least, like for example, least you can use it maybe in the facilities industry, where maybe a company is, because a company can be also given a lease, say, because if we take it like as individuals to say, for example, I'm given a lease of 1 year where I'm staying, fine. It can be short term. But what do we say if a company has been given 3 to 4 years or 5 years lease by an institution to use the facility? It becomes long term. So, but lease and hire, they are the same. Because a hire you can use it, maybe you are saying, I'm hiring a car from water, okay. Maybe you want to use it to say, I'm hiring a car from a fleet management company for about 1 week, but I'm being leased a fleet for 5 years. Maybe it's the way you want to take it, but all the same, lease or hire, they can be the same, but let's take it as a difference the way I want you to express to you, I want to explain to you to say, a hire can be short term. We are saying maybe I'm hiring a truck or I'm hiring a car for about 1 week. Then I'm being leased a fleet for about 5 years. That would be the difference. But if you understand, if the concept in terms of the industry of inventory is just the same, what will be the difference is, are you outsourcing, that is lease or hire, or you are insourcing, you are doing it by yourself? Are you buying your own fleet, or you are hiring a fleet, or you are being leased a fleet? That's where the difference is. But in according to the way you want me to explain it further, I can, okay, fine, I can say lease is long-term or hire is short-term. But it all depends with the way you want to use it, and all depends with the industry. Because you can also say, I'm being leased the premises with the facility management for 5 years. That becomes long-term. What is decommissioning, and what is the difference from disposal?
Mr. Semuka, I think maybe just to also bring our attention to the time. So if you can just respond within half a minute, and then we bring the session to a close. Those who wish to get in touch with us, you know, they can just, and then we can take it offline, but the time has been exhausted.
Okay, let me just answer what is decommissioning and what is the difference with the disposal? Right, now, with the end of life of a product, we've got two major processes, decommissioning and disposal. Decommissioning, remember the machine has been commissioned to start working. So when we are decommissioning, we are saying the machine is no longer of use within ourselves. We are declaring it to say the machine is no longer useful in according to our production principles, or to our production plans, or to our production's regulations. So decommissioning is just officially making it not functional within the institution. So from decommissioning now, we can now dismantle it in pieces. Then we are preparing for disposal. Disposal is now we are saying, let's use a method of auctioning, or let's use a method of donating it to the community, or let's use the method of pitting it, like putting it in a pit. So the difference there is decommissioning is formally declaring that the machine is no longer into use, and disposing is making sure that we do away with the machine. Thank you very, very, very much, colleagues. For those who are going for the exam, wish you the best. I understand it has been postponed, but let's not lose the patience. And the exam is coming. Hopefully, I was of high benefit to yourselves.